In a bid to tackle hunger in the state, the governor of Niger State in north-central Nigeria, Mamedu, in the week banned the sale and distribution of food items and farm produce in bulk from the state to other Nigerian states. According to the governor, the sale of food items in bulk is resulting in scarcity and starvation within the state. Now, the state government is warning that anybody found flouting its orders will be punished. This comes amid economic hardship in Nigeria, with many attributing the cost of food items to the continuous fall in the value of the naira. To reduce the hunger, the federal government also during the week ordered the release of 102,000 metric tons of grains, even as it issued a stern warning to hoarders to stop doing such. Still on food security, the federal government is also considering shutting down borders to prevent illegal export of raw foods. Now, the Minister of Agriculture, Abubakar Kyari, gave the hint while fielding questions about the economy from a joint Senate committee on Friday. Let's take a listen.
Because of the devaluation of the naira, our food, in terms of on their own food, is the cheapest around the neighborhood. So you find a lot of undocumented export, which is smuggling, across our porous borders into these neighboring countries. Then in addition, again, the other angle that we have noticed over the period is the unavailability of foreign exchange. A lot of investors, be it Indians, Chinese, Turkeys, that are operating in this country, buy our crops that are sought after outside, like soya beans and sesame, and buy it at exorbitant price just to earn foreign exchange when they go out there and sell it and earn foreign exchange. The bad thing about it is that most of these monies are not repatriated back. Exports is a good thing for us, but when it's not repatriated and when the government does not derive any income from it, then I'm sorry, that's not a good sign. So what we're trying to do here is we're trying to ramp up production. I think it's an issue of economics between supply and demand. But what we are faced with, unfortunately, is we have to see how we can secure food for our 230 million people. And at the same time, if this economics continue, then you have to either seal up the border, which is against the ECOWAS issue, or produce for whole of West Africa.
Minister of Agriculture, Abubakar Kyari there. Well, to help us take a look at the issues, we have joining us in the studio, the Country Director of Action Aid Nigeria, Andrew Mamedu. Thank you so much for joining us on the program. And of course, Action Aid is actually in the vanguard of ensuring that we tackle hunger, not just within Nigeria, but across the world. Talk to us about these measures being put in place by the federal government. Now, let's start from the release of 102,000 metric tons of food to contain the protests that we've seen since Monday. It actually started a week before this week. That was 2 weeks ago. And during the week, we saw multiple protests in different parts. And it's surprising that the federal government is just getting to get these intelligence reports that there's actually hunger across Nigeria.
Thank you very much, Sambo. Thank you for having me. So clearly, this is an emergency response. So first of all, better late than never. So the federal government has taken steps to release grains from the reserve and also speak to the private sector to see what would happen. So it's a good thing. However, you said it clearly. Civil society, smallholder farmers have been crying in the past years, 2 years, last year, even beginning of this year, we started crying that we would face an acute food shortage. And currently we are ranked 103 out of 121 countries in terms of food security, in the negative sense. So, and our condition is placed as very precarious. That is where Nigeria is ranked at in terms of food security.
Sorry, please, who's doing the ranking here?
So this is according to the Global Hunger Index.
Oh, okay.
So this Global Hunger Index. So clearly, it is a situation. Food is, it's called food security for a reason. There are a couple of things so that comes with security. 3 of them comes to mind. So the first one is energy security. There is food security, right? So clearly, food security can make or mar a country. We did not have to wait for people to protest. We did not have to wait for people to rise up and go to the streets. And good enough, the president responded, which is good. Hopefully it stops this protest. But this is now an emergency response. What we need is a long-term measure that would respond to the crisis we're having. We're having food crisis. People can, in some ways, live without some of the other rights, right to things and all of that. But in other ways, there are things that people cannot live without. People cannot live without food. Food rights, for me, is the number one fundamental right. Once you have a right to life, the next thing is you would need to eat. How long would you go without food? Nigerians will find a way. And if they don't find a way, they would then go to the streets. That is what we have seen today. And clearly, it is not, I didn't think it took us by surprise. So it was just like, it's a matter of when. The next question is, if we do not respond adequately, to what level will it be escalated? And what the responses we're having now, we can discuss that. But those ones are just stopgap measures. We need more sustainable responses that will ensure that we have food security in the country. The president started very well. He declared a state of emergency on food security. Now, but that is the challenge with us as a country. When we say we're declaring a state of emergency, what does that mean? What is changing? So we just come and we declare it. So for a state of emergency, if you look at other countries we have studied, if you look at state of emergency, they scale up intervention, in some cases ×3. So what did we do when we declared state of emergency? When the president declared state of emergency, what happened at the state level, at the federal level? What happened at the state level? What happened at the local government level? What measures did we put in place? What timeline did we set for the state of emergency? Sometimes we just declare state of emergency. We don't have a target, like, oh, it's going to start from this date, and our target is in the next 1 year. We'll up our investment, we'll up production and all of that in this direction for the next 12 months and judge us. These are the indicators we are setting to achieve in this period. That did not happen. But we are hoping that with these measures going in place now, that state of emergency will be tied to this response that we are having. It looks like we are responding to a humanitarian crisis. That is what it looks like right now.
Not a food crisis.
Not a food crisis. It looks like we are responding to a humanitarian crisis, not even the food crisis. So if it's a food crisis and we have a state of emergency in that sector, then what do we need to do? How much are we investing beyond opening up the silos and all of that to pump in food, beyond closing some state borders, which of course has its implications? What are the other measures we are putting in place, and what are the targets we are facing, and what are the role of various stakeholders in dealing with this? There are other measures, Sambo. We'll talk about all those measures.
All right. Let's talk about the implication of actually shutting down our borders at the moment, because the federal government actually says that food is being taken in bulk to countries like Cameroon, countries like Niger, countries like Chad, and all of that. And we also buy some food from some of these countries. I mean, like beans, for example, cowpea. A lot of people actually buy red beans from some of these other countries. And so it's not only Nigeria that actually sends food in bulk. We actually buy food and buy livestock from some of these neighboring countries too. Could it also affect the food supply within Nigeria too?
Okay, so ECOWAS protocol does not allow us to close our border within the West African region. So all of
but former President Buhari did.
Of course, he did it. Of course, there were implications for that, and you could flout it, and of course he did, and maybe nothing happened. But the question was, okay, let's go back to times where border has been closed. So President Buhari closed the border. We anticipated, or we expected, that the price of rice, particularly, would reduce. So we wanted to give comparative advantage to our farmers. So we wanted to close the border and let our farmers have comparative advantage, because we're getting in cheaper food, and there was a lot of smuggling happening. So we saw a couple of reasons why that happened. And it also involved smuggling of arms. Small and light weapons were coming in through those processes. So that's why we closed the border. But we did not, we did not follow up actions with the closure of the border. There were a couple of things that needed to happen. Those did not happen. So when we closed the borders, it led to food shortages. So the farmers who were depending on, so it's simple mathematics. How many bags of rice, how many tons of rice do we produce in the country? And if you're going to close the border, it's just like the removal of fuel subsidy. If we're removing the fuel subsidy, this is what we will do. These are the implications for the citizens. But these are the measures we'll put in place to cushion it. So you don't remove it and like, okay, what do we then do? No,
yeah,
you don't close the border.
Domestic production.
Exactly, you don't close the border like, okay, what do we then do? Rice does not grow in 2 days, 3 days, 1 month, or 2 months, or 6 months. You have to plan it way ahead. So closing the border, then did it yield the desired result? It did not. Till the president left, the prices of those things did not come down. So rather, they kept going up, and they've been going up. Now, with the aspect of the food we export, being one of the justifications the minister gave, in some ways, yes. But I can categorically say that we import more food than we export. But the good thing is, with the devaluation of the naira, more people, more farmers would want to earn foreign exchange. Of course, if you sell your farm produce for as little as $10 would give you how much? 15 times 10, 15,000 naira. Meanwhile, you are selling it here for 5,000 naira. So you'll be happy to take it out there to get the foreign exchange. In some ways, it's supposed to be good, but that should happen when we already have surplus. When we already have surplus in country. The major challenge is we are definitely not producing enough. It's a comparative advantage. So if people want to buy our produce, it's a good thing. It gives us the foreign earning we are looking for. We are shouting that we don't have enough foreign earnings. So that gives us that foreign earning. And we've kept saying that agriculture is the Nigerian gold, should be our Nigerian gold. But it is not. It is oil that is our gold that contributes 70-something% of our foreign exchange. So how do we tilt that? Well, the numerous challenges we have, that is where we should focus on. Statistics shows that I was discussing with my colleague before coming on air, head of Agric in ActionAid, and he says that we lose 3.5 trillion to post-harvest losses.
Interesting.
3.5 trillion.
Because we don't have adequate storage facilities.
Exactly.
Or
we don't have to move them from one location to the other.
to
So our challenge is not even that food is not available. It is the distribution and the movement of the food from one location to the other. Go to some places today, some of those perishables are definitely actually perishing.
Yeah, I thought we had a national food reserve. I mean, I've seen the silos, even within Abuja here, if you're going between Wagulada to Abaji, you see where you actually have the silos, food reserve and all of that. And I guess that's where President Tinubu has ordered that these grains, which are like millet, maize, gari and others, should be moved from. Isn't the federal government supposed to be buying some of this surplus food to mop up? Do we still do that so much?
So the thing is, we are supposed to be, well, but we are not. Some of these farms, they are not accessible. Some of these locations, and some of them, for them to bring their produce, you have 10, 20, 30 checkpoints you have to settle police. Middlemen are the ones that then find their way there and then triple the price, whatever they buy. First of all, they cheat the farmers, the smallholder farmers. They buy it at, say, 10,000 naira, and they spend maybe another 5,000 naira in moving it, and they come to town and they sell it for 30, 40,000 naira. That increases the price. But the federal government does not have a strong and clear mechanisms for mopping up for those silos and all of that. So we still suffer some of those post-harvest losses, and some of those post-harvest losses are calculated in the sense that how much are you supposed to sell this and the amount you finally sell it for the people. Oh, because I need to eat. Instead of selling it at 20,000, I sell it at 5,000. So that whole 15,000 is calculated as part of the post-harvest losses. So that is what accounts for why we have a huge amount of post-harvest. On the average, each state, if you spread across the 36 states and FCT, each state has about 95 billion post-harvest losses. So the governors that is why it's a federation. We are in a federation, so we should take advantage of that. In things like food, we should take advantage of that. I love the arrangement that happened between Lagos and Kebbi.
Yeah,
you know, the rice,
the rice project
and all of that. That was a beautiful arrangement. So those are the kind of arrangements we should have in country. Governors should take charge. What are the things we have comparative advantage on? However, there is the issue of insecurity. That the farmers, we had a conference sometime in November or December, and we had farmers and all of that. We work with about 2 million smallholder women farmers in the country, and we had a conference with them, and their biggest complaint is the issue of insecurity. We cannot go to our farms. we cannot go to our farms. So if they're not able to go to their farms, how do they produce for us to have enough to feed the nation and for us to export? So it's a good thing for us to export. We shouldn't be looking at closing our borders. It's when we have not dealt with our internal, except it's an emergency, we then close the border. But closing the border is still not sufficient. Our borders are porous. You cannot even close them sufficiently.
And you've been working with the smallholder farmers. Apart from the issues of insecurity, talk to us about agricultural inputs. What have they been telling Action Aid when it has to do with that? And then, of course, the issues of women. I know you work with a lot of women group. Many women actually farm in this country, and most of the food we eat actually grown by women more than men. Talk to us about how they are getting some sort of support, whether from government or organizations like yours.
Okay, thank you very much. So smallholder women farmers, they contribute close to 70% of the food we eat. Smallholder farmers generally, and the women constitute over 60%, 65% of that number. So that tells you that it's smallholder women farmers that is majorly feeding us. And of course, when it comes to insecurity, issues of insecurity, women are the worst hit. So they would, of course, they suffer the most. So clearly, once it comes to that, they will leave the farm. A man might dare to go to the farm if there are chances and all that, but a woman would definitely not want to go to the farm. And the smallholder women farmers, so beyond the issue of insecurity, there are issues of availability of land. So in some part of this country, women can still not own land. So they still have to imagine a big farmer, a big female farmer in some part of this country. You have to use your son's name to procure a land. You have the money, you have the resources, you have everything. You cannot procure, so you have to use your son's name to procure a land. You have to borrow the land, or you have to lend the land from the male farmers. And then, of course, you have to, sometimes the farmers just come in the middle of I say, oh, you're no longer farming here. And this is when you're just starting. Some of these crops, it then prevents you from doing, of course, long-term crops. You just do the ones that are annually, and okay, you rent it lease it for 1 year, and after 1 year, and that is it. So that is a big issue. And of course, there are issues of inputs. There are issues of access to cash and loan. So they would want to expand. Smallholder farmers do not necessarily mean that. So once they have the wherewithal, once they have the resources to get the inputs, once they have the land, they can employ as many hands as they can to expand their production. But because they don't have the land, they don't have the resources to get the inputs, the seedlings and all of that. They don't have the other things like fertilizers and all of those, organic fertilizer and all of that. That, of course, inhibits them from expansion. And there, of course, there are whole issues of the patriarchal society we live in. So their husband determined what you should farm or not farm. I don't know if you have heard this story before. In Cross River State some years ago, when Obasanjo was promoted cassava, women used to farm cassava, and then men farm yam. But there's a particular year that cassava was very expensive, so the women in Cross River made so much money. Then the next year, the men then came and said, no, you go and farm yam, we will farm cassava. Okay. And guess what? The price dropped. There was a dip in the price of cassava that other year. Then the men lost and all that. So clearly, that's the patriarchal society we live in that enables men determine what the women should farm and all of that. That is not good for our system. It affects them. So what we do in supporting them is, of course, government is providing them with loan, but not as much as they ought to. Like I said, we just work with about 2 million, but there are way more than that. Way more than 2 million smallholder farmers, women farmers alone, that are involved in producing food for us in this country. So government should work with them. We should work with them to expand their production. They have the capacity to expand, but rather, most times we focus on the industrial agriculturalists. We focus on the big time farmers, large scale farmers. So those are the people we focus on, but that is not where our solution lies. These people produce 60 to 70% of what we eat, so we should focus on how to get them to expand, and that will be the solution to our problem. Yeah,
very interesting developments you've outlined here, but talk to us about the issues that we have ongoing across the country, where the focus actually ought to be on real-time farmers. Real-time farmers getting access to loans. But we have portfolio farmers coming to Abuja to get the Anchor Borrowers Program, get loans from back of agriculture and all of that. And we don't seem to have that, output from them. How do we ensure that both smallholder farmers, middle holder farmers, if you can call them that way, actually have access to more government support? Because what I've seen also is that I've observed that most agricultural ministers and all of that, agricultural ministry officials, they stay more in the state capitals or Abuja, and they will just be drawing policies. But the people who really need these policies drawn down to them don't have a direct interface. How do we ensure that we boost that, support for these smallholder farmers and the median farmers, if we may call them that way, to have more access to these inputs and loans?
Yeah, thank you, Sambo. I think that is the challenge, one of the challenges we are having. That is the gap between what the books are saying. So the book says, oh, we've given out 30 billion naira as loan to farmers. Now, if you check that in comparison with what is actually happening, of that 30 billion, 80% of that money is going to the political farmers, is going to the high-end farmers. But the smallholder farmers, like I said, that's supposed to get 60, 70% of that loan, are not getting it. So you have people, you have various lists. People, in some cases, people buy slots. So sometimes we don't tell ourselves the truth. We know, but we pretend as if nothing is happening. It's okay. But because we pretend, of course, it keeps going on. So people buy slots. They say, oh, do you want this loan? Okay, all you need to do is, the loan is 1 million. All you need to do is bring 300,000, or you get 700,000 and somebody keeps 300,000. We hear all of those, but you cannot pinpoint it to somebody and the person will say, no, I will not agree to, if you want to scale it up and report it and all that. But how would we ensure that we use technology to administer this? How do we make sure that today, with technology, you can geolocate every farm? So if you are in this farm, you are in this location, my phone can be pinned to my location. So your phone has to, this is your number, your particular number is pinned to a location. You must be there consistently for a particular period for you to have earned and enjoyed. So the telecoms company would be able to provide this kind of service to us, to us, to be able to say, yes, this person actually lives in Abaji, because his or her phone has been pinned to that location for the last 6 months, 12 months, and all of that. So you can categorically say that, so it's okay to give them loan to farm in that area. But you are giving the person loan, and the person lives in Abuja, to farm in a place like Niger State, or to farm in a place like Enugu, or in a place like Ekiti State. So how do you manage all of that? Technology is the answer. So the list that we use, how do we make sure that the list is accountable? How do we make it public? Let it be public. Put it online. We gave Sambo, we gave Andrew, we gave Amina. So it's public. We gave Amina loan. So anybody else,
they are not members of a political party.
They're not members of a political party. It's not a political party.
Because we hear that too, that farm inputs like fertilizers and some other things, once they come, you will have to use your party card to go and collect
them. So, but those are the challenges we have. If we want to politicize food, there are some things you shouldn't politicize. We are suffering it now. Thank God we nipped the whole, I cannot say we have fully nipped it, but at least we're trying to stop it.
Yeah.
The whole protest happening. But people have a right to protest. We had a case in Niger State. We had to use backdoor to get to the governor. You need to deal with this, or else we'll mobilize society to come to your state. And thank God the governor listened.
Yeah, how about all the rice pyramids too that we had some?
Well, you should be telling us about that. We don't know about the rice pyramid.
All right. Well, we thought it would be enough to be able to feed us and then we export. Nope. But like you said earlier, the price keeps going up and up. Let's talk, as we try to round off this conversation, about how Nigeria is not accessing issues like dry season farming very well. Once the wet season is over, a lot of people just don't go to the farms any longer and so on, because there's no access to water and so on. How do we boost irrigation farming? How do we ensure that our dams, help our farmers to be able to work all through the year, not just when it's raining season?
Again, unfortunately, it has to be with government's regulation, government framework, and government support. Because that is where it starts. Of course, private sector would come in and all of that. Why would we farm only in rainy season? So right now it's dry season. Lots of farming is not going on. But during the dry season, there are technologies that and there are also even crops that requires low water supply to survive. So there are even there's rice that you can use, you can plant in places that's not very marshy. There are different kinds of rice varieties right now. So technology has helped us in a great deal. But how do we latch onto it? We are not taking advantage of those. So you have the Lake Chad is one of my biggest, my organization Action Aid's biggest campaign. We need to look at the Lake Chad, and we are working tirelessly to see how the international community will come to the issue of the Lake Chad. Lake Chad used to be a major source of irrigation in the north. It used to be a major source of our cattle getting food and water in the north. But of course, with the shrinking of the Lake Chad to 25%, that is a huge
yeah,
kill.
I mean, and it's become an ECOWAS and even AU issue.
Yes, it should be a global issue, because the truth is, if the 4 countries involved, if Nigeria alone, of the 4 countries involved in the Lake Chad, if the irregular migration keeps increasing, of course they're going to find their way to Australia. Nowhere is far enough. They're going to find their way to this.
All right, Mr. Mamedu, just before I let you go, talk to us about how Action Aid and other CSOs are helping the federal government to tackle this issue of hunger. Because there's also what's called urban poverty. I mean, people who don't go to farms, who don't have access, but within cities, inner city areas you go to, people are unable to feed. Maybe those in rural areas, okay, they could get a few things to actually feed them. But there's rising hunger within some Nigerian cities.
So our niche, our major focus is working with smallholder farmers, particularly the smallholder women farmers. So we've been working with them, building their capacity, getting them into cooperatives. And right now, we have statistics that have shown that their yield and their income has increased in the last 2 to 3 years, has increased by 25%. Okay. So those are within those 2 million that we are working with. Yeah. So, and that translates to more food in the country. But increasingly, that number is not, the level of increase is not commensurate with what we are putting in. How do I mean? We are supposed to be somewhere around 40%, but we're at 25%. We play clear calculation with what we do in other parts of the world as Action Aid. We're in 72 countries currently. And the reason is, of course, insecurity is top of that list. The issue of climate change is also a big issue. And that is why for us, we are not promoting industrial agriculture. You understand? So we're not promoting industrial agriculture. So industrial agriculture is harmful to the environment, but we are looking at sustainable agriculture. We are looking at issues of, so the alternative to all of these, the alternatives to it. So clearly, how do we make sure that instead of using fertilizer, but we're using organic manure, we're using, instead of using pesticides. EU, for instance, EU says, nope, you cannot export this produce. The level of pesticides on them is higher than our limits.
Yeah, and we're having those problems in Nigeria.
Exactly, and these things were imported from the EU. So we say you imported them to us, but there are alternatives. There's pepper-onion combination. There are a whole lot of combinations they do. So we work with them to create these alternatives that brings healthy food and more production for the country. But most importantly, it is engaging with government to play their role. Like what we are doing right now is for us to hold government accountable to play their role, to create that enabling environment. So imagine what the Niger State government is doing. If every state does that, it will be a chaos. That is not the solution. So closing each border, each state's border.
Yeah, I'm wondering, and Niger State is actually the inroad between the north and the south.
Exactly.
So if they are shutting down the movement of food. It means southern Nigeria.
So that is not the solution. I mean, the solution is about
to be a problem.
What is the problem? How do we ensure that we have more food? Because you are stopping these farmers from selling. They want to sell. They also need money. Some of them, if they don't sell in 1 week, they will not be able to feed the next week. And you say they cannot buy in bulk and all that. But that is not the solution. We recognize that it's an emergency, is in panic response from the governor. Of course, my people should eat. We recognize that fact. But it's beyond that. But how do we make sure that as a country, the president takes leadership, the governors all participate in it? Let's forget this whole oil thing. Oil will dry up at some day. But agriculture would always be there, we would always eat.
All right. We must thank you so much for a very brilliant analysis on all of these issues that we're facing as a country. Andrew Mamedu is actually the country director of Action Aid Nigeria, and he's helped us to understand all the issues we're facing. I'll continue to also be a voice for you in promoting this access to, developing our women, most especially, because that's my interest, supporting those women who are mothers to help feed the nation. I must thank you so much.